So hi there guys. So we will continue our discovery on finding supply and demand lines in general. Okay, and actually this is very important because this is how we do our analysis. And supply and demand line can be dictate, or you can see the supply and demand lines in either up or down. Okay, there's no other way of supply and demand lines. There is only two lines that we want to analyze. Now we can see this starting from this Tesla charts. So we can see that obviously from this part, from this part until this part, we can conclude that there is more demand than supply. All right, there's more demand and supply. And then from this part, which is this point is the peak, and we can see that this is the supply line. All right, this is the supply line. So you might be asking, how about the minor movement? Okay, actually in terms of the minor movement, okay, in terms of the minor movement, it is less significant. It is less significant if we see it in a bigger picture. Okay, but if we see in a small picture, we can see that, right, the stock's behavior is when there is demand, right, there is demand, there will be supply, right, there will be supply. And this is a normal situation for any financial equities portrayed in the chart. So you can see that there is demand lines which indicate the price going up, and the supply line indicate the price going down in small time frame. But in major time frame, we care less about what happened in minor. Rather, we want to see what happened in the bigger picture. Okay, so we can group all together from this point to this, from this lower peak to the upper peak. We can say that this is the demand line. Okay, and from this upper peak to lower peak, we can say this is as one straight supply line. Okay, where the majority of this movement is seller. All right, there's more seller compared to buyer within this supply line. This is what it means. So we can see that subsequently the next line, it is more buyer compared to the seller. So majority people in this market are people who has more desire to buy. They are more aggressive buyers in the lines rather than seller. So if you trade within this lines, demand line, so what you want to do is most of the time you want to buy low and sell higher. Okay, same goes when it goes down here to the peak. Okay, so in these lines, what we care most is we want to sell the equities. Okay, because most of the time the market is going down rather upwards compared to upward movement. So the next line, you can see the movement is most going up rather than going downwards. So in the next subsequently, so we can see that in these lines, we can see there is major downtrend happening, and this is the point that we want to sell or short rather than buying. Or if you are not shorting, you want to stay away from the market at this period of time, because the majority, the market is in an uptrend, because the seller dominated the place, so it is more bearish than bullish. So now you can see that price going back upwards, and the buyer are getting dominated the price within this area. So at this moment, this is where you want to buy rather than selling, because the buyer is more aggressive, or the buyer is getting aggressive. Okay, now if you learn about support and resistance, we can see that we can draw a line of support and resistance here. This is an extra analysis. So you can join 2 points, and you can see the resistance lines. The resistance lines for the current movement. For the current movement, this is the resistance lines. And what it's trying to do, the seller is not so aggressive, and if the buyer are coming into Tesla shares, it will be back out again. It will back out, and the buyer will become aggressive again. So this is the place that we want to buy before it further goes up and break this resistance lines. Okay. So the next, so we want to analyze supply and demand line in Facebook. Okay. So we can see that Facebook is price movement is quite random, right? It is quite random, but when you see a random price, what you want to do is you want to see a bigger picture. Okay, you want to see a bigger picture because you care less about the minority. Okay? You care less about the minority. What you want to analyze at the first hand when you open a chart is actually you want to analyze stock price in majority. What is its majority movement? Okay. Right, we are waiting for the charts to open up. So now we can see that the daily charts is quite random, although we can see there is movement upward here, majority, and here is minority. So to keep away this minority movement of what we call noise, we open up a bigger picture. Thus, we can see more clear picture where the market is, right? Where the market is. So now we analyze supply and demand. So we analyze the supply and demand lines. We can see that throughout these sections, throughout these left-hand side sections, you can see Facebook Incorporated company has been going up since 2013. Okay, since its breakout, the horizontal support here, it has been an uptrend movement for about 5 years now. 5 years now. And we could hardly seen any major retracement in the weekly chart until of what happened recently. We can see that Facebook are getting in process of retracement. So we can see a long Marubozu here that indicate that the market seller are trying to push down the price as low as possible, and it's indicate the maximum seller has been achieved in the market. Okay, and it will be changing hands either for a while or permanently. Okay, and the buyer coming in, thus the movement is going upwards. But in terms of our objective here, which is we want to identify the demand lines and supply lines, we can see that there's no significant retracement here, although actually there's some retracement going here and here, but we care much less about it. We can conclude that in these 5 years, Facebook has been rallying in major rallying these 5 years, and the demand line is impressive. Okay, and just about recently, the Facebook shares has been going down and retrace and going through a correction period. Yeah, you can see that the seller is kind of dominated over here. Yeah, and it's resulted in the price correction. Yeah, price correction. So different from minor movements, we can see that there is buyer, there is seller, there is buyer, there is seller, there is buyer, there is seller, there is buyer, there is seller. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the market move in a zigzag pattern. Okay, market move in a zigzag pattern in a minor time scale and also in a major time frame. Okay, it's all move in a zigzag patterns, right? And you can see that at this time, 5 years time of the price rallying, the buyer has been dominated the marketplace of Facebook. Okay, and about just recently is going down. Okay, the seller taking in. Yeah, so that's Facebook Incorporated. Then next we see Google stocks. Next we see a Google stocks, right? Actually, this is not Google, is Alphabet, where you can see immediately you can see it is in an uptrend. Okay, immediately you can see it is an uptrend. So it's not quite hard for you to see, and there is no major retracement up until now. Okay, this is the longest retracement until now. It's a major retracement that happened recently in a weekly chart. Okay, in a weekly chart. So what we can see here, the demand line for weekly, the buyer is still in possessions. The buyer is still aggressive compared to the seller. Just about recently, the seller coming in, maybe to neutralize, to balance off the buyer movements. So actually when we analyze any market movements, every buyer must be seller. This is something that the market must required to do. Okay, after some buying, and then the price goes up for quite some time, there must be seller time when the price will be going downwards over time for a certain period of time. For example, like in this Alphabet Incorporated, that the price going through some corrections before it's continue to rallying up in the future. Alright, so I hope that you guys understand the demand and supply lines, because that is the basic thing that we need to do, that we need to learn, and we need to understand in order for us to do our analysis, and we go through a deeper learning and analysis of supply and demand in the future. Alright, thank you.